Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in for the third episode of The Synergy Show. I'm your host, Ibrahim Abowath, and today we have a fantastic guest joining us today, Mr. Patrick Soy. I'm going to give a very brief description of who Patrick is and why we wanted him on the show. Patrick is a mortgage broker, executive vice president, and the principal mortgage broker of record of an award-winning mortgage company called Integrity Tree Financial. So Patrick has been in the industry for over 20 years, almost 2 decades of experience. He's also a professor at Remick University. He's trained thousands of students and mortgage brokers who are now thriving in the industry. So we're really looking forward to interviewing Patrick today. Thank you so much for coming on, Patrick.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I guess I'm done. You introduced me. We're good, right? We don't.
I guess, yeah, we'll just call the podcast it there. So, guys, follow Patrick. We'll see you next time. Anyways, we're just kidding. We got a lot to talk about. I'm just very interested in learning more about your journey and learning more about, the first year as a mortgage broker to now, nearly 20 years later, where you're an executive vice president heading both the Ontario and Alberta division of Integrity Financial. I'm sure there's thousands of agents under your wing. Can you give me a brief idea of how, 20 years ago when you started this journey, did you see yourself in this role that you're in today?
Most definitely not, right? I think for me, what kind of happened, if I look back at 20 years, wow, it's a long time, but if you look back that far, I was 18 years old at that time. And I didn't really know what direction I was going, but I knew I was always working since at the age of 12, but I always knew I wanted to get into something of finance. And then thankfully I was working at the bank as a teller for a couple months. Had somebody who was a mortgage broker, said, hey, do you want to come work for me? Had no idea what a mortgage was. So that's how I kind of started entering into the broker side. They kind of taught me the ways of kind of the industry. I was there for about maybe a couple years. And then I said, I need more experience because at the age of 18, who's getting a mortgage from anybody, right? You're young, you have no idea about responsibilities, about being self-employed. And I remember the biggest mistake I had made was I had no idea I had to be a sole proprietor or incorporate myself. So then after that, you end up with a huge tax bill, right? And you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? Keep in mind, back then, income was making $30,000, $40,000 a year 20 years ago. So that was sustainable for an 18-year-old, right? So was there for a bit. Then I jumped shipped over to the lending side. Because I was what's the best opportunity for me to learn about the industry, gain more experience. I then jumped over to an alternative lender called Reservoir Trust back then and started my career as fulfillment to underwriting to broker development to renewals and all of that. But I went through a lot of transitions. During that time was the subprime market where the credit crisis was happening, right? So being that young and getting to experience that was very tough and challenging because you saw a lot of people lose their jobs. But the company that I was with, they were a reputable company, but they were also being bought out because there was a lot of loans that obviously shouldn't have been taken at that time.
Of course.
Everybody was doing 100% lending, 0% down payment. So that was easy back then. And it was just stated income. You say that you made this X amount, did it make sense based on the industry? Sure. But yeah, that kind of went down under. We then got acquired at that time, by an American company. We were a company of about maybe 400 down to 150. That then led to us being bought out by another company.
Wow.
So then I went through 2 acquisitions, surviving layoffs. While everybody was getting laid off, I then went from a company of 150 down to 20 individuals left. And I remember clearly being brought into a hotel conference room. And the new company that was purchasing us said, congratulations, you're now part of a bigger company that's 500 plus, but everybody currently right now in Toronto and also Alberta and BC are currently getting laid off. So there was a lot of change in such a short period of time. I would say that was the first 5 years of entering the mortgage space. And then, I just continued to work my ass off. But that's the thing for me this was a time for an opportunity for me to learn about the business, understand not just mortgages, but why people make these decisions. And especially in a volatile type of market, right? Because at the end of the day, the biggest thing I learned early was these entrepreneurs and these individuals that open up these lending institutions, the last thing they're looking to do is lay off people, right? They're here to employ individuals to get the economy going, but sometimes the market is not on your side. And then from that, I then joined this big, massive lending institution company that grew down to almost, I think they're about 1,500. So I was in sales for a bit. Initially, I was like, do I want to go into sales? Because I was a kind of a shy kid. I wasn't always very social and active, but I always had opinions. I always wanted to look at growth opportunities and how a business could scale and grow, and then getting myself out of that comfort zone. I then ended up being in a business development manager role for a few years. Ended up moving from Calgary, because that's where I was born and raised, to Toronto about 10 years ago. And then at the peak of my career as a BDM, I was just training mortgage brokers, recruiting mortgage brokers, just much selling the lender's products, helping brokers scale their business, getting to understand their models and what I could do for them. And then I started getting awards and accolades just because of the support that you're giving, and won a few awards for like top business development manager in Canada. And I was nominated a few times. And once you kind of get to that peak, you're kind of saying, okay, what do I do now? And I think for me it was, I knew that when I had moved to Toronto, I was always going to go back to the broker side, because now you're wiser, you have all this knowledge. You're saying, okay, now I can challenge myself, and I'm more confident than I was then to actually get out there and look for business. So I was in total with that on the lending side for about 14 years. That was a huge chunk of my adulthood, but in the younger ages. And then I left that side about 3 years ago, and decided to plan and moved over to the broker side. So when I moved over to the broker side, I was kind of like, do I join somebody, or do I kind of stay more independent? I don't know what I really want to do, but all I know is I need to get up there and start brokering. So that was scary at first, right? Because you're going from having some sense of security and your pensions, your RSPs, and all that type of stuff, and then you have just expenses being paid for you as a salesperson at a company. You're getting that guaranteed salary, and you're jumping ship, and you're saying, what if this doesn't work out? A big thing for me, what people would always say when I jumped over was, why would you leave during a downturn of a market? Because 3 years ago, rates were really low, but then all of a sudden they went skyrocketed. And I was like, you know what? If I could do this and survive the credit crisis when I entered into the industry, why can't I do it now?
Of course.
Right?
You know what they say, recessions make the most millionaires, right? So
I wish I was a billionaire.
But the reality is, the people that take the risks when the market is volatile or conditions aren't the greatest, usually they're the ones that reap the most rewards in our society. One of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, because your journey is quite unique. It's not the traditional path to entrepreneurship, right out of high school, start your own business, and you went through the whole employee and working for a company for 14 years, 15 years. What was the biggest challenge you faced when jumping from the stability of a regular T4 salary job to being self-employed, being a business owner now, being responsible for not only growing your business, but at the same time servicing your existing business and everything that comes along with being an entrepreneur? What was the biggest challenge you faced?
I would say the biggest challenge I probably faced is, for me, it was the concern of being successful, right? And I think when you're somebody who's always constantly trying to be successful at everything you do, I think you always constantly crave it. And that's a battle that I still deal with today, right? I can say I got all this, I got that, this and that, these awards. Really, at the end of the day, a lot of that doesn't really matter as much. I think it really comes down to what have you really done for others. And I think how far I've come, I still challenge sometimes living in the present moment, because I'm always thinking about about the future, and then I forget. I'm like, hey, you know what? I've actually accomplished a lot of things. It's an interesting journey that kind of got me there, but I would say yes, success is probably the most challenging thing that I've come across.
So how would you say you overcame that challenge, right? Because clearly that was a multiple years ago, and you're still running a successful business
Yeah.
today. So how would you say you countered that challenge of, being almost, I guess, afraid of success or, anxious
Yeah.
about it?
I would say rejection plays
Yeah.
a huge part. And I'd say this also my agents as well. I'm like the best thing that can happen to you in your career, especially when you're in sales or being a mortgage broker, is getting rejected. Because
Absolutely.
that's going to motivate you. That's going to push you, whether it's rejection from a realtor, a financial planner, a client, whoever it is, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't just stop. And because this is your bread and butter, and you're an entrepreneur, you have to keep on going. It's at the end of the day, who's going to be accountable, right? You can't start blaming, pointing fingers. Everybody's saying, well, this and this and that. Well, that's where you got to sit down, strategize, look at your business plan if you have one. Because I know there's a lot of mortgage brokers in our industry, and probably the same with realtors, that don't have a business plan, right?
Or even just business owners
Yeah.
that are just running their business on autopilot without actually strategizing
Yeah.
and thinking how they're going to grow their business over the next 5 years or what their long-term goals are. But sorry,
Exactly.
please go on.
Yeah,
Please keep going.
no, and that's the thing, right? Even when I jumped ship from the lending side over to the broker space, I had planned for a good probably 6 months, 12 months. Now, did they have any idea that I was going to leave? Yeah, I kind of gave them an indication 6 months before saying, hey, I'm not happy. I'm likely going to maybe want to do something, change, a shift in some sort. Now, is that a shock to them? 100%. When you have a loyal employee, of 14 years, they're kind of saying, what triggered this? Why is he going to do that? And for me, I think ever since I was a young kid, it was just like I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to have some sort of business of some sort. And, I think being able to do that now, it was scary within the first 2 years because I was kind of more like a one-man show as an agent. And I would join different brokerages and I was like, okay, do I want to build my own team? Do I not? And then I said, maybe it's too early. So you have these self-doubts, but you're like, maybe I need to be successful first at brokering and I need to do an X amount of volume before I can actually start building that team and getting to, the scale, that 5-year dream or 5-year plan that you have, that you plan for yourself, right? So, but it's funny how things work out because 2 years as an individual broker and not being part of a team, my business partner, I used to be his rep, business development manager back in the day, and he had reached out to me one day, and then he was like, "Hey, what are your future plans?" And I said, "Well, I'm like, we never were like, we weren't like friends, but we always kept it professional." I was like, "Well, why?" I said, "I'm planning to maybe open my own brokerage and likely, build a team and all that." He says, "Why don't we chat? Let's talk about business and if the opportunity and let's just see where things go." So we chatted for a few months, we negotiated, we talked about, he wanted to step down from mortgages. He's been in the industry for also about, I think, almost 25 years. But he's also a family guy, right? His family guy is 3 young little ones, married, all that stuff. I'm single, not married, and I'm just wanting to grow because I've always been a workaholic. So I was like, you know what? I can either start from ground and build everything up, or I can kind of go into a business partnership with somebody else and scale it that way. And at least this way, for me, it was we're building a dream together, and it wasn't my ego coming in the way saying, I want to do this all by myself. And that was a big thing because I was like, I don't want to let go of this. I don't want to let go of that. No, I had my name set up, my brand set up, my colors, everything. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I said, that stuff will always change. And I think I forgot that the brand is more so me than it is the business, right? And if I was going to go out there, people are not going to say, hey, it's Patrick with integrity. It's Patrick Soy, the mortgage broker, right? And that was something that was always instilled into me as I was going through my whole career journey, because through my coaches and mentors, they would always say that to me. Don't let a company overtake who you are. It's you yourself that make yourself, and that you are the brand.
Yeah, you
right?
are your brand.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget that. They affiliate themselves with, major companies, major corporations, and they let the company's image overtake theirs. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. Always position yourself first as the brand, and maybe the company as someone that you leverage to help you run your business, right?
Sure.
One thing that you mentioned that I just want to circle back on, I think it's very important for a lot of business owners to understand that you don't have to do business by yourself. I run a very successful team, and I have a business partner, and I learned this lesson the hard way, because if you try to do everything yourself, sometimes you're just not going to achieve the same heights that you would if
Yeah.
you leverage somebody else with a different skill set. And that's the important thing. You know, you have to partner with someone that has maybe a different type of skill set that you can then leverage that complements your personal skill set, and together you offer a better product for your customers, right? That's the key thing. And at the end of the day, 50% of something is always better than 100% of nothing, right? And when you made that switch over into partnering with another entrepreneur, another business owner, what were some of the challenges that you faced now going from an independent role to, you know, more of a partnership role?
Yeah, I would, I would say that some of the challenges that we probably came into was there wasn't a lot of challenges because there were some, but I'll start with like why there wasn't. A lot of reasons why there wasn't a lot of challenges is because I'm a very transparent person. I'm kind of no BS and say, you know what, this is who I am. This is what this is what I want to do. And if you disagree with me, that's okay. But we need to decide whether we put that on the shelf and we come back and deal with it. But I went in with the intentions as well and telling and being transparent. I said, if I'm joining you in this partnership because you want to step down from the mortgage division and you want me to overtake, I can't have you override all my decisions. What I want you to do and what you can act as is kind of like an advisor. Be there when I need you. And yes, you can have your input and stuff, but I will always hear you out. I'll never dismiss it. And if we just can't come to a conclusion, then maybe that's not something we necessarily need to do today, but let's relook at it in the future.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, and for me, I don't go into business with somebody who's just selling a dream. I look for honesty, transparency, and of course integrity, and that there's a sense of loyalty. You know, I think what I saw with my business partner Asif was that he wasn't just a mortgage professional, he was a father, a husband. He's, you know, was really pushing, he loves educating. He was also teaching, not at Remick, but he was teaching for another nonprofit called Simba.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, that, to me, it was just like, okay, there are qualities here that were kind of alike and certain values. So we would just chat and chat. And I said, let's just chat and try to get to know each other a little bit more because I know you professionally, but I don't really know you personally, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we need to be best friends because that's not my intent. For me, I don't believe in going into business with your friends or your
family.
Yeah, mixing that. This is separate. So we kind of set those boundaries ahead of time. But I would say the challenges that we probably come across is he's older, I'm younger, so we have two different outlooks on stuff, right? So he'll say, I can't deal with the younger generation of what they want to do, and I say, well, no, you got to embrace it, or technology, right? So those are the challenges we come at, and then I'll push him. I'll say, no, you're going to do this. I'll use, for example, he just learned a couple months ago that you can deposit checks via your phone app. Right? And he loves going to the bank. And I'm almost like, why are you going to the bank? Just deposit it from your phone.
Yeah.
It's fine. You know, it's rare to get a check, but like certain things like that. So I do like to push his boundaries. And I think with him, the excuse is I'm old. And I'm like, no, you're not that much older. I said, you just need to adapt to change.
Yeah, I think being adaptable is a really good trait to have as an entrepreneur because if the economy changes, society changes, government changes, there's so many changes and variables that are involved in, you know, the way your business is affected. You have to be adaptable. I want to circle back to one thing, and I just want to point this out. I think it's so important what you said. Before you get into business with someone, have a chat with them, sit down and set your defined roles. I think that's so important. And have clear expectations and, you know, let the other side know if we disagree on something, this is how we're going to resolve this situation, or this is how we're going to resolve this issue. I think a lot of people, you know, they get excited, they jump the gun and they get into partnership with people and it just goes horribly wrong because they haven't set clear expectations from the beginning, right? So I think that's very important. That probably points to the success you have, even despite the age gap between you and your business partner, right?
It's not that far off. I think he just likes to play that card a lot. And I'm like, okay, we're still not that far off, right? But you know, I think when we look at it, it's very important that you do set those boundaries and those expectations ahead of time, right? I would never go into business with somebody like that. And I know myself, I'm not also the easiest person to deal with because I'm very ambitious and very driven, and I like to say, let's do this and let's do that and let's challenge that. And I like to test people out, how far they can sometimes go with their reactions when it comes to certain ideas that I might bring up. Not saying that I, deal with everything, but I have an indication of, a direction that I want the business to go, and a lot can happen in a short period of time. But I think, Asif, he's been great, for the last year that we've been in this business partnership. He really takes the initiative to support me. Now I can say, like, we're kind of like family, right? We're not hanging out every single day, every week, and this and that. Like, we still live two different lives, but we have respect for each other from a business standpoint. And he trusts my decisions that are being made. And I always tell him, if I make a decision and it fails or something happens, we'll deal with those consequences when it happens. But we can't just keep on thinking about why we can't do it. We got to look at it both ways and let me make my mistakes. Yeah. Right? Because that's part of entrepreneurship.
It is. You learn from all the mistakes that you had, and then the next time you come across that same situation, you're not going to make that same mistake. You're actually going to do it better than you would have done initially if you had done it right.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the thing. Like, you have to fail to move forward. And I think failing is a crucial aspect of, being successful in life. I think just one more thing I want to touch on about getting into partnerships. I was mentioning that, people jump the gun a lot and they get into partnerships too quickly without, setting right expectations or defining roles and, writing a business plan together. I think one of the things that, especially in business, that people should look into is in the investment space, in real estate investment, a lot of people will do, joint ventures together. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'll do one flip project together and see how it goes. They'll do another one and a third one. And then once a few small projects were done together and you get an idea of how that person is on a professional basis, then you commit to a longer and more strategic partnership with that person, right? So I think if even just collaborating with people on maybe a deal or maybe a transaction a few times and then getting a sense of, how they work before committing to a larger long-form partnership, I think that would resolve a lot of the problems that people have in partnerships, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think for me it was a little bit, Asif had an idea who I was. Obviously, I was his rep, but he got to see the way I communicated, the way I did my business, because even working for a corporation, that was my book of business. So I had to manage it a certain way, and he would see how I would communicate with his agents, his business, help his team grow, right? If they weren't doing a lot of business because they were with somebody else, and then I brought them on board, and we could take them and scale them from doing nothing to say doing 20-25 million with a lending institution. That was success for him, and it was like, there's something about this guy. And I remember asking him, I said, why did you choose me out of the thousands and thousands of brokers that are in this industry? I said, I didn't, he was just like, well, why not? And I was like, well, I don't know, tell me why you reached out to me, right? So we had a conversation, and there was a lot of things that we talked about, and he said, I just been watching your career and your whole journey, and there was a post that I had made about now stepping into the broker side, but I was adding more authenticity about kind of my upbringing and all that, my first year after being a broker. And I think there was something there that he said that triggered him to say, this is the person that I kind of want to work with, because he was so vulnerable in that post. And I just learned more about him that I even want to get to know him more. And you can see that, he is going to be successful in a lot of things he does.
For sure. I think that's the thing. Like, there's so many people that are watching your journey and you don't even realize how many people are watching your journey, right? And all it takes sometimes is one moment or one action that triggers that person to reach out, and then that's the start of a new journey or a new relationship or whatever the case is. So I think the moral of the story is everybody's always watching you, so make sure
everybody's always watching you. And I always say that, I'm like, as much, the challenge that you have is, as much as sometimes you just don't want to be in the public eye and people seeing what you're doing, is that when you are becoming successful, even like yourself, right, one mistake that you might do or something that you might say can be scrutinized, and then all of a sudden, you're like questioning what's going to happen with my reputation. Yes, my reputation obviously matters a lot, right? But that's always in the back of my head. It's always saying somebody is waiting for you to either fail, somebody's either waiting for you to not do well, whatever it is, or make a mistake or say the wrong thing. But I always go in with the mindset saying, okay, you know what? If I put this out there, can I live with it? Because I know once it's out there, it's out there. There's no taking it back, right? But then at the same time, I look at it as like, am I speaking my true, authentic self? Because there's a lot of fluff that goes out there, right? We see it within
Especially
leadership and all this stuff.
and
Exactly,
everything, yeah.
right? And everybody does and says, oh, like I'm being like, such a great leader. And like, okay, but there's different types of leadership you can get into. And I think the question is, a big reason why I left the corporate side, going into, if you're on the corporate side, you go into leadership, you're still conforming to the way the business wants you to conform. Things that you say, right? I think for me, being a broker, yes, you still have to be professional when you're dealing with clients, but it allowed me to be more honest and real with the agents, with the public, my opinions and thoughts about things. It didn't always have to keep in mind that it, was corporate all the time. It was like, I can be an advocate on this and I can talk about this and I can talk about that. And yeah, not everybody's going to like it, but this is also what my values are, right?
And the reality is authenticity, the public and people that you work with recognize that you're being authentic. And people can recognize when you're not being genuine, when you're being fake.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I find some of the most successful people are also the most authentic people. They let their true personality out into the world for everybody to see. And because everybody sees it, they know who they're going to be working with. And that just builds a layer of trust before they even get to know you, right?
Yeah.
I think that's very important. Shifting over to mindset a little bit, I wanted to know, now, as an entrepreneur now, as a business owner, but also as a professor and teacher and educator, you've trained thousands of agents over the years. What are some of the, essential qualities or mindsets that you think, agents or business owners or entrepreneurs need to have to be successful in any industry?
I would say the first thing, and also because I had to go through it as well, early in my career, it was being able to self-reflect and being able to be self-reflective on yourself, but also being self-aware of like your actions. Because I think we lack a lot of that. If you're not self-aware of how you are, based on personality or what you're doing, how are you going to grow, right? You have to acknowledge saying that maybe I am not the best at this, but this is what I want to accomplish, right? And for me, I'll say, okay, maybe I'm not great at this, maybe I'm not great at that. Are these things that I really want to work with? And can I improve in it? And if I can, great, but that takes time. But then also when I'm having conversations with whether it's peers or clients or even like friends, I will always be aware of certain actions that I do. And they're like, their response is usually like, I love the fact that you're aware of all these things and you acknowledge it. It's not like you're in denial of it, right? And that to me is its skill set, right? To develop the self-reflection aspect, because a lot of people don't do it. To really look back at their journey and to say, how can I be a better person or a better professional? What mistakes have I done? Why did those mistakes happen? What was the biggest key things that I learned from them? And have I also improved in today's world? And am I implementing certain things that are better today than what I was doing then, right? So I look at that. I think even for new agents, they're coming on board, I look for ambition, drive, accountability. I think the ability to listen to learn, not just the ability to talk, right? Because I think when we're dealing with clients, you're there listening to them, right? I'm sure it's a little bit, it's the same thing in real estate. We talk about the product, the finances, but it's that whole discovery process. So if you can't develop that skill set of listening to learn, you're going to lose out on a lot of details about the client. And that discovery process is so key. When I go into it, I keep that conversation as natural as possible with a client, right? And I'm a big believer, obviously, in education. That's why I deal with teach agents and all that as well. But just listening to them, because once you get more personal with them, they'll open up about kids, whether they have a separation, divorce. They'll open up about how much their kids might be going to school, but they're struggling financially. There are all these little key things that you can pick out and saying they have young kids. They might have Canada Child Benefit income, right? Or they'll say, I'm going through a divorce. Perfect. You might get alimony, separation income, right? So all these little things, and that's why I think one of the key skills to have And what I look for is really that ability to listen to learn.
I think the key things that I took out or extracted from that was number one is being self-aware,
Yeah.
number two is active listening, and number three is being in a position to give value and educate people.
Yeah.
And no matter what industry you're in, I think if you nail down those three qualities, you will be successful in whatever industry that is, whether it's sales or some type of service that you're offering.
Yeah.
I wanted to just go back a little bit to the self-awareness aspect of things, being aware of who you are and maybe as a business owner, who you are as a person. I think one of the key aspects is also being aware of your limitations, right? Knowing where I excel and where I face challenges, where I have difficulty. I think as entrepreneurs, especially people that are new to the industry, we understand and recognize that we have to do so many things. We have to play so many roles, wear so many hats, and we try to be the best at every single thing. But I think one of the key aspects of scaling your business is when you let go of control over every aspect of your business and you start leveraging tools and other people that can help you grow your business, right? So what are some pieces of advice that you can give to people that are, maybe stuck in that position where they have trouble letting go or losing control over their business? How do you leverage others while still, maintaining your business identity?
Yeah. I think a lot of that comes down, and I think this is a challenge with a lot of leaders because we all love control, delegating, right? And that's something that is always a challenge. But for me, when I deal with it like an agent and they have all these ideas, I will usually say to them, did you want to take the initiative and create something on this and then come back to me and let's talk about it, right? Or if I have an idea and I say, do you want to be involved into something like this? And maybe I could start it and then you can finish it or include other individuals into it. When it comes to my business partner, same thing. Sometimes I'll delegate things to him. He might delegate to me and I'll say, no, go do that, but I think it's also, being able to say, look, this is our list of things that we have to do. I'm going to assign this to you and this is what I'll take on. Let's just finish it within this time frame and then let's reconnect. So, I would say that's how I kind of like manage the day-to-day, but it's also a lot, right? I think for me, being also just the principal brokers for 2 provinces, there's a lot of responsibilities like, operations, FinTrack that's coming into place now. You have commissions that you got payroll, you got to process. You also have compliance that you got to oversee and look at all the deals as well, because guess if that file's not compliant, that agent's not getting paid, right? So those are the things that you're accountable for. Now, as we continue to scale even bigger, that might look a bit different. Right now, we have a team of 22 agents, so it's manageable to maintain all of that. And for me, I know one of my biggest skill sets is that I'm a quick learner, and I love like dealing with the operations and systems and stuff, so I can process things really quick, right? But I know that when I have to teach somebody, I have to be more patient with them when it comes to it, because not everybody is going to be a quick learner. Not everybody likes to dealing with the operations or the processes and documents and all that type of stuff. But I try to create a process that's easy for the agents, where it's not too complicated. And like when it comes to tools and stuff, because coming from that lending background, I used to see a lot of challenges that mortgage brokers had and what they were not receiving, say, from their own brokerage. So when I joined Integrity, it was like, let's create all these type of different worksheets that could help them. It would create more efficiency, make them look better to the lender. It looks like they actually know what they're doing, and that they're not lost, because there is a lot of lost puppies in our industry, right?
Of course.
And sometimes I think people come in because they're like, let's take the course, and what you teach in the course doesn't teach you how to be an amazing mortgage agent. It teaches you about regulations and how to pass. Pretty much, it's to pass the exam.
Yeah.
The real work begins once you actually join a brokerage, and then you're having to learn everything. You're having to know how to run your own business, finances, documents, operations, sales. You got to go out there and network, marketing, right? Some people want to oversee their own social media, and that takes a lot. Social media is sometimes like a full-time job. Yeah. And some people don't even realize that, but.
So, scaling, obviously, you've had to delegate all of these tasks to other people. That's the only way you did it. You scaled from, I guess, 1 or 2 people, you and your partner, to 22 now. what's the next step that you're going to have to take to scale to, let's say, 100 agents? What would be the course of action that you would take?
That's the next. So I think right now, me and him have had conversations. I don't want a team of like 100 agents.
Okay.
All right. I look at quality over quantity. Somebody who, brings the volume in, but is a good agent. I'm not saying that they have to be high producing, but what I really look at is like, okay, is this person doing a reasonable amount that a normal average agent would be doing? And is that worth bringing them on board? But because the thing is that if you have way too many agents, and because I provide one-on-one coaching and mentorship to my agents, especially more so the newer ones, it takes away from me being able to support them. And because I also love mentoring and coaching them, and it's not just like we're talking about deal by deal basis, it's literally, they get 30 minutes to 45 minutes of my time. We sit there, we talk about what are their downfalls, opening about vulnerability, their past, what challenges are they coming across, how can I help them? And sometimes that can help motivate them, or maybe they're lacking confidence. How do you get out there and become more confident? How do you go out there and kind of network, right? So because mortgage to me, that's easy once you get in the hang of it, you can learn it. But these other skill sets, those are a bit more challenging. And sometimes because I came from a coaching background for many, many years, it helped me out a lot, right? To really self-reflect, to be vulnerable, to understand what my purpose was, what my value was. And having gone through all of that, now I can share that with the agents and kind of teach them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, quality over quantity is obviously very important. I operate my business in the same way. I guess, what I want to wrap up this interview with is asking you more about, some routines or habits that you think have contributed to your success today. Mm-hmm. So, what would those routines or habits be?
Don't sleep. Okay. I sleep on average, and I know most people say, yeah, most entrepreneurs, I sleep on average maybe like 5 hours a day. But it's also because I wake up early, and I also tend to go to sleep late. I wake up every day about 6 o'clock in the morning, more so not really by choice, but because of my dog. So I kind of start my day with that, go for a walk, kind of get ready. I do the whole, even if I'm working from home, I have to feel like I'm going into work because I can't just wake up in my pajamas and then all of a sudden start working, not even brushing my teeth or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people tend to do that, and I was like, but how do you feel throughout that day? And I always ask them, and they're like, whatever. I'm like, see, that's what I mean. Like, for me, I'm getting up, I'm taking a shower, I'm dressing up, doing my hair, whatever it is, having a coffee, reading up on the market, and I just feel good about what I accomplished just within that first 2 hours of the day.
Yeah.
And I think if people did that more, it would be good. And I always tell people too, I'm like, sometimes even for me, I will dress based on my mood, right? If I feel down, maybe I might not dress as well that day, but if I feel great about the day, then maybe I might want to wear more bright colors and go out there.
For sure.
But it all depends. That's probably one big routine I have. I
think just to pause there, I think that's very important what you said, because especially as business owners, sometimes we get consumed by our work. And if you don't dedicate or allocate maybe even just an hour of time to yourself throughout the day, just for yourself, not for your business, but for your personal well-being or your personal development, I think you're not going to have peace of mind in your business, and that's going to reflect on your business, and your customers and your clients will notice that too. Exactly. So I think it's very important that, as business owners and entrepreneurs, give some time to yourself. You can work 14 hours a day, but take an extra hour per day and just give it to yourself, whether that's to work out, whether that's to read up on the market, have a coffee, walk your dog, spend time with your family, your loved ones, whatever it is, something that kind of takes you out of the business for a little while. What do you think about that?
No, I 100% agree with you, because if you're not taking time out for yourself, then your entire life is just going to be all over the place, right? I'm a big calendar user. Like, if I don't have things on my calendar, it doesn't exist, right? And people are like, what do you mean? I was like, you want to do something? Send me an invite in my calendar, right? Because I put placeholders in my calendar as well. Sometimes I just need thinking time, right? Sometimes I just need to focus on something, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to take an hour here, hour there, and that's just my time because I know that my schedule is so busy, right? And I think a lot of people lack that. I don't know how some people do it without no calendar and they just kind of wing it, right? But for me, it's like when you have a lot of responsibility, because I'm not just responsible for myself, I'm not just responsible for a dog, I'm also responsible for 22 other agents, making sure that they're okay and that the business is operating and running, and that you're dealing also with the outside of the brokerage, which is the lender partners, and then you have the clients,
Yes,
right?
that's the one thing I think as business owners people don't realize, or I guess they do realize, but they don't think about it too deeply. When you run a business, yes, you're responsible for yourself, but now you're responsible for the lives of the people that are working underneath you or with you. And you're responsible, or at least I take responsibility for, the food that they give to their family, and basically how are they going to survive if I don't offer them the mentorship and the coaching and the support that they need to thrive in their business, which will reflect in their personal lives. And I think if you're not taking time for yourself throughout your day, you won't be able to give 100% of yourself to your business when it's time. You might only give 70% or 75%. Some days you may give 100, some days you may give 60.
Exactly.
It's going to ebb and flow. It's never going to be consistent. And that's going to reflect in the lives of the people that you work with, right? So I think you have to look at it from a multi-layered approach, right? It's not just yourself, but it's these people. So you have to kind of take time for yourself to give the best version of yourself to other people, right?
Exactly. You're bang on there, right? I think even looking at it's like, even on your personal life with your friends and stuff, I know sometimes they hate it, but I have to say, I'm going to send you a calendar invite. And they're like, do you really have to? I said, my whole life is just based on this, and it's just to making sure that we're on the same page. It's just a habit, but it's a good habit, right? I know many people will say, well, you don't need to do that all the time. I'm like, but I do, because if I forget something, then I kind of end up double booking myself, and that's not a good thing. So it's not like I have an assistant. I am my own assistant. So yeah, that's kind of, I think that's something I always look at it, because my whole life, a lot of my friends even my friends always say to me, they're like, I don't understand why everything has to be in your calendar. And I'm like, it just does. Even if it means time to pay bills or a mortgage payment, that's in my calendar. Taking my dog out for a walk, that's in my calendar. Otherwise I forget. So it's making me accountable. And I think accountability plays a huge part. And that's why I try to teach the agents. I'm like, if I don't see stuff in your calendar, then you're probably not doing anything from my perspective.
I think it just, putting something in your calendar just adds a layer of commitment.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I tell people all the time, like in sales, like, your main job is to prospect for new business, right? Look for new clients, new customers, new referral partners. If you say you're just going to get up and do it from 9 to 12, you might do it 1 or 2 days, but if on the third day you might miss it, right? But if it's in your calendar and you've marked it down on a daily basis that from 9 to 12 p.m. every single day I'm going to be calling people, or I'm going to be doing this activity or that activity, it'll just add an additional layer of commitment that's going to help you be more productive, which will lead to more business and more money and income for you at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So I totally agree with you. If it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist.
I'm sure a lot of people might disagree with us, but hey.
Yeah, and you know what? I know very successful people. Like, my dad's a successful entrepreneur. I don't even think he knows what a Apple calendar is.
Well, some
right?
people still have the paper calendars or the agendas, right?
Yeah.
And like, I have it here, and I'm like, but I can't see it. So if I'm coaching you, how do I see what you have there? We need to now, let's train you to adopt
of course,
technology.
Of course. And that's the thing. Like, I usually send calendar invites to all of my clients too. But then you also have to be adaptable. If I have an elderly couple, I'm not going to send you a calendar invite.
I won't send it. I'll put it there. But then I'll give them a call before and say, hey, just wanted to remind you that we're meeting tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about being adaptable at the end of the day. It's been great speaking with you, Patrick. Before I let you go, I want to ask one final question.
Yeah.
If you could do it all over again as an entrepreneur, what would you do differently?
I think I would believe more in myself at an earlier state, rather than letting the outside noise try to control how I think and what I should do, what was best for them in their opinion, because that sometimes can cloud your vision on what you want in life. And that's something I would have done differently, is probably being more confident and my capabilities of doing things, because I think, when I look at a lot of these things was because of things that I was pushing myself to get towards two, it wasn't because people were just handing things out to me. I had to ask for them to get that opportunity and then to prove to them initially. Now, I don't feel like I need to prove anything to many people nowadays. Maybe to my team that, hey, we're gonna, be even bigger and better. But yeah, I would say that.
I think ultimate self-belief is a quality that you need as an entrepreneur. Like, I think you need self-belief to the point where people think you're crazy. Where people think, I don't know why this guy's talking like this, or I don't know why he's planning to do this. It's never going to be possible. But if you have that self-belief that you can make it happen, and just a little bit more confidence in yourself and your qualities and your values and what you bring to the table, I think it'll just lead to so much success.
I agree.
This has been a very, very insightful conversation. Thank you so much for being on our show today. Before we let you go, where can people find you and where can people reach you?
Yeah, they can find me either on Instagram at Pat Soy, Patsoy Morg. I think it's MTG. On that, or you can just simply Google me, Patrick Soy Mortgage, and you'll be able to find most of my stuff either online. Yeah.
Perfect. Don't worry, guys. We're going to put his social media and all his contact information in the episode description. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
This was fantastic. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the third episode of The Synergy Show. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.